I wanted to make a video regarding the situation, as of a couple weeks ago. Some of you might be wondering why I took so long to make this response. That's mainly because I wanted a good but belated response. I've got a list of things here that I want to talk about, so I didn't want to rush it, basically. I didn't want a terrible, crying, early apology, that becomes so infamous. And on top of that, a lot of the things being said are just blatantly untrue, and when I first saw them, I wasn't sure how to respond. It took me a while to recoup from this and think about how to go forward. It really shocked me. Firstly, I just want to apologize to Chey, to my friends, my family, everyone involved in this situation. It's been hard on everyone, and I'm certainly no saint here. I certainly have made my mistakes. So I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm going to just give my side as I see it, and I ask that you watch this whole video before reaching any conclusions. That's my only request. So a couple weeks ago, my ex, Chey, also known as Pop, on Twitter released a statement regarding our relationship. This was a just shy of 1 year relationship. It lasted from 2016 to 2017. We live in neighboring cities, and we're about 3 hours apart by train. And my parents were unaware of this relationship. They're very religious, and I knew that if I told them I was going to see my girlfriend, they wouldn't have let me. So I told my parents that I was seeing my friend Harry in Sydney, and I was only able to go and visit her because Chey convinced her mother to lie to my mother over the phone and spin the whole Harry story. So we could see each other maybe once every month or two. And I'm going to use as few jump cuts and as few edits in this video as I can, but I do have a stutter, and I usually edit this out, but I'm just going to keep it to a minimum as long as it's watchable. So getting right into the specifics, Chey made this tweet longer about me and about her grievances with our relationship, and let's get into it. So basically, at the beginning, she states that she had intentions to wait until 16 before doing anything. I never got this impression. She never said this to me. She never implied it. In fact, very early on in a Skype call, she said to me, nobody needs to know, when I asked her if she wanted to wait to do anything. So I'm not sure why she said that and why she thinks that, or if she does. And now obviously I don't have a recording of a Skype call from like 2016, but I do have plenty of evidence from very early on in the relationship where she clearly made no intention to wait until 16. That was never clear to me. I never got that impression, and I don't know why she's saying that. There was a very two-way thing here, albeit a very awkward teenage two-way thing, but it was a two-way thing. Most of the messages I won't release for both of our sakes. They're kind of inherently embarrassing, but they definitely exist, and I never got this impression. There's actually one message where she says that she wants to wait until 16 before doing anything, and that is from January 2018, after our relationship ended. So maybe this is what she meant. I'm not sure how it's too relevant. We'd broken up, but we intended to get back together after I moved out, which never happened. But she could be referring to this, but if she is, I don't know why. This is after the relationship. This is after all these things she's saying. Next, she goes on to describe our first date, where she says, Michael, on our first date, touched me in a cinema, despite me never kissing someone before. I assumed this was normal, although I was uncomfortable by it and let it happen. And now this confused me when I read it at first, because it's not really how it happened. It's true that we did meet on our first date, and we did go to the cinema. That much is true. And it was very awkward. We'd only talked online before that. Neither of us really knew what we were doing too well. We went into the cinema, we had our first kiss, our teeth hit each other's, neither of us knew what we were doing, and I was willing to call it quits there, when she pulls my hand down and says to touch her, which is a pretty long way from how she portrays it in her version of the story. In fact, she was actually the one who brought up the entire idea of doing anything in the cinema. It was her idea, and I had no reason to believe she wasn't as in on this as I was, so I'm not sure why she made it look like this. And I think it's worth mentioning that I thought this was completely normal at the time as well. This is my first relationship, unless you count a week-long year 9 relationship where the most we did was hold hands on the way home. So unless you count that, this was my first real relationship, and I had no idea what to expect. And now, before we move forward, I do want to mention that she mentions in this bit that she's never kissed someone before. This confused me, because that's not the impression I had. In fact, when we were walking around the streets of Sydney while we were dating, we passed by like a Woolworths or something, and she told me a story from what happened outside that Woolworths once, where she and an ex-girlfriend of hers kissed in front of some religious guy preaching about gay marriage. So, unless she told that same lie to me and a friend of mine who heard the same thing, then I'm not sure why you would lie about that. And on top of this, on the same note, she also mentions later in the post that she's never been in a relationship before. This isn't the impression that I was under. I was under the impression, from these screenshots here, that she's had at least 2 boyfriends and 1 girlfriend before we ever met. So I'm not sure why she would say this, and she had more relationship experience than me when we began dating, for what it's worth. Hey guys, it's me from One Day in the Future here. I just had some things I needed to clear up a bit better, and so I figured I'd just re-record a bit of this video. So, in this next bit of her statement, Chey says that I got touchy-feely in a park and I was making unwanted advances while she was crying and asking me to stop, and that I moved her hands to touch myself. This makes me sound like a monster, and if it did happen, I would be a monster. But this isn't how it happened. What did happen was this was a very awkward but mutual situation, where she describes I moved her hands to touch me. She did that of her own volition, and she even mentions this in Discord messages from after we met up in person, so yeah, I'm not sure why she would lie about that. And the way she talks about what happened at that park is very different from how she says it publicly. She is very much on board with it, with the messages from the time where it actually happened. And the way she talks about it then is very different from the way she talks about it in hindsight. I had absolutely no reason to suspect that she didn't want what was happening or that she wasn't on board with it. She even mentions doing other things, and I had no reason to not think that she wasn't as keen as I was. She also mentions me taking off her bra while she's crying. Firstly, I would never do this. If I ever suspected that she didn't want any advance I was making, I would stop. And also, the way she talks about it in the messages from the time gives the impression that I wasn't even intentionally trying to take off her bra, which I wasn't, so there's that. In general, this was a kind of awkward teenage situation. We were both kind of trying to guess what the other wanted and cater to that. She also mentions that I was asking for a blowjob. It probably came up in conversation, maybe, that, you know, or wouldn't it be cheeky if we did it here, you know, in that way. But I never honestly wanted or expected one from her, especially in a public place. And then we've got the DMs that she released, beginning with the most bandied around ones. These are jokes, not good jokes, not acceptable jokes, not appropriate jokes, not funny jokes. And honestly, they're probably going to haunt me until the day I die. They are probably the worst messages ever sent by man. But they are jokes, and they are taken out of context and put into a much, much worse one. And at the time, especially in my friend groups and social circles, online and offline, edgy humor like this was cool. It was funny. Obviously, in hindsight, it's not very funny and it's not appropriate. If you told me that these made her uncomfortable, I would be inclined to believe you. And over the course of this relationship, there are plenty of things that I do regret. There are plenty of things I wish I could take back, and if I could, I would in a heartbeat. You know, I was emotionally unavailable. I didn't give you the support you needed. I was overly focused on certain physical things. I was a controlling asshole, you know. I was a dick, and I'm sorry for that. I really am. It's probably my biggest regret in life, and if I could go back and change it, then I would. So yeah, I've apologized for that before, I'm apologizing now, and I'll apologize as many times as I need to. It's something I do regret and that I am ashamed of. And I have no doubt that it has caused real pain on Chey's end. And now with this next bit, I'm going to spare as many details as I can for her sake. But previous to these messages, I'd mentioned something a complaint I had that I probably should have kept to myself. It's embarrassing for her, and she's saying that she wasn't too keen on doing that thing in the first place, and now she's embarrassed. And then I say that it wasn't that bad regarding the complaint that I had earlier. Comforting people is not my forte, and it definitely wasn't back then. Anyway, around here, she crops out around 11 minutes of conversation between us, where I apologize and try to get her side and understand how she feels. I wasn't very good at it, but I tried. In the video where she's scrolling through her messages here to prove that they're real, she also goes nearly up to where I apologize and try to understand her point of view, but then quickly scrolls down. I feel like this is worth mentioning because she says that these were the kind of conversations we would have, despite cutting out all the good bits and only including the absolute dodgiest things I say. It's not overly representative of the average conversation we would have if you cut out every good bit. And next we have these messages. I understand how bad they look. They look terrible. But just know, just right off the bat, that I would have and will never force myself on somebody who doesn't want it. That's not who I am. It's disgusting, and I would never do it. Even the version of myself who sent these messages would never do it. What you see in these really embarrassing messages is me trying to articulate how badly I wanted it at the time. Not very well. I didn't have any filter, and I should have thought about what I said before I said it. I'm sorry about saying this. It was stupid. It was thoughtless, and I hate that I said it. I hate reading these now. So I'm sorry for making you feel uncomfortable, Chey. It certainly makes me feel the same now, reading back on them. And now, through this relationship, I felt like Chey was the only person in the world I could trust. I didn't have any filter when I spoke to her. I felt like I could say anything, and she would understand exactly how I felt. We both thought we were going to get married at the time. This is how young and silly and foolish this relationship was. And in the end, I placed way too high of an expectation on her. I wasn't a good boyfriend, and it ended up being pretty damaging. And again, I'm sorry for that. This was my first real relationship, and I was a massive, inconsiderate, emotionally unavailable dick. I didn't think about things that I said to Chey a lot of the time and how they made her feel, and I'm really sorry about that. I acknowledge it, and I've tried my best to make up for it. I've also seen a lot of people saying that I was abusing my power at the time, which doesn't really make much sense because I didn't have any power or influence then. I did have about 30,000 subscribers, about 28, 29 when we began dating, and I got like 1,000 to 2,000 views at the time, and I hit 30k, and then over the rest of our relationship, I was below 30k because I lost subscribers every time I uploaded. So I think it's safe to say that I didn't really have any power or influence to abuse over her. We met over Skype, and we met through mutual friends. I think she knew of my channel, and my YouTube channel never really gained any real traction or influence until after we broke up. Anyway, moving on to her second statement. She says, Michael contacted me on May 27th prior to Drama Alert after learning that I was going to come forward with my experience with him. He did not deny the claims as shown in the attached screenshots. Well, yeah, I didn't deny the claims because you hadn't made the claims yet. There were no public claims to deny. Yeah, I'm not too sure what the logic here is, but I thought you'd have no reason to say anything but the truth, but that turned out to not quite be right. He also talks about when we met to have a face-to-face conversation after everything had happened. This was before the twit longer. Michael says, she also said she would break up with her current boyfriend for me, which weirded me out, to be honest. Here she's referring to my statement to Keemstar, where I mentioned that I'd apologised and tried to resolve this whole thing privately a few times, even meeting up with Chey in person, and she said that if she and her current boyfriend don't work out, then we could get back together. I never said that she would break up with her boyfriend for me, and I never said she said that. Just to be clear. But he has taken the situation out of context. I had met with Michael to talk about what had happened during our relationship to sort our issues out, to which we met in a cafe and talk. Michael, after talking in this cafe, said he needed to drop things off at his hotel. We arrived and I said I would stay downstairs, to which he told me, no, you should come up. Despite feeling awkward, I felt safe in the fact that my friends knew who I was with and I would be okay believing that Michael had changed. When in his room, I sat on the floor, not wanting to sit on the bed. Even though I felt more comfortable with Michael than before, I still wanted to keep distance. Michael asked me multiple times to come onto the bed so we could hug and talk face to face, to which, although feeling uncomfortable, I agreed to. And she also goes on to describe a situation where I said, hey, maybe we could try again, and she, feeling uncomfortable, just kind of agrees with me and says, yeah, maybe if me and my boyfriend don't work out. Now, I realise that this part is mainly he said, she said, so I'm going to just go through it quickly and move on to things where there are more receipts, but she makes this whole thing sound a lot more hostile than it was. I was in Sydney at the time for 2 reasons, mainly to resolve things with Chey and to go to a YouTube brand event, which I never ended up going to, so I was there entirely to resolve things with Chey. And we did go to my hotel, and I didn't really push the issue very much. I asked if she wanted to come up, and she said yeah. The tone at the time was really comfortable, and if she had have said that she didn't want to come up, I wouldn't have really pressed the issue. I didn't ask multiple times if she wanted to come onto the bed. I just said, hey, come up, and she did. So, yeah. I didn't sense any real discomfort at this point. We went up to the room, talked about our past, she filled me in on some community drama with mutual friends of ours, and we left before too long. I said that it was unfortunate that if we had have met at that point or later, then our relationship may have worked, and that's what prompted her response of that if her and her current boyfriend don't work out, then we could get back together. Before too long, we leave the hotel room, we hang around Sydney for a bit, and she says the same thing while we're waiting near her bus stop and she's about to head home later. And I understand that this is very he said, she said, it's not very definitive, so I don't expect you to take many conclusions from this. I do have texts from the time that proved the general tone. It felt very comfortable, and I felt that she was completely fine with me by this point. I felt that our past was behind us and we were just putting the final nail in the coffin by meeting up. I really thought this was the case. I also do have some texts that refer to her saying that we could maybe get back together someday, where she says, how are you? How are you feeling about it all? And I said, it's nice. It's like a weight's been lifted. Yeah, it's great. How are you feeling about the stuff we talked about towards the end? Here, she's referring to being friends in the future and maybe getting back together at some point. That's what this is referring to. Oh, like the future and stuff? Yeah. I feel the same as you, really. Would be really nice to be friends again for now. Obviously, it's nothing definitive, it's nothing concrete, but there's that. So take whatever conclusion you will from that. And like I said, at this point, I thought the final nail was in the coffin. I thought it was over and done with. I thought it was behind us. And since November, December last year, which is when we met up, we've been talking just, we've only had friendly chats, just asking how each other are doing, and that was that. I thought it was done. And she can absolutely take moving on at whatever pace she wants. She's not obliged to just get over it. I'm not saying that at all, but I think it's understandable why I thought that it was over, and especially given the texts that were exchanged at that time. I'd apologize, I'd taken responsibility the best I could. I thought it was done. So I think the way I reacted in those Instagram messages when it looked like she was going to make it public, I think my reaction is kind of understandable when this whole thing rears its ugly head in a possibly career-changing way. I feel like that's an understandable reaction. And now Chey's main reasoning for making all this public was that she's concerned that I'll do the same thing to other girls and that she's heard concerning things about me with other people. I still don't know what she's talking about here or what kind of things she's heard that I've been doing that make her feel like I'll do the same thing again. I really truly have moved on from then. I'm a completely different person regarding that aspect of my life, and I don't know what she could possibly mean here. I'm aware that I can be a horribly awkward person, and maybe I've unintentionally done something that made someone feel uncomfortable. If so, I'm sorry, that was never my intention, but I don't know what she means here. In the Instagram conversation that Chey and I had before this all went live, which is now public record, she expresses concerns that I've been weird with other people and that she's concerned I'll do it again. She doesn't specify who, despite me asking a few times, and she also says that she's concerned I have stan accounts and people who are probably willing to send me things for my attention. I said that I'd never taken advantage of this, and I even offered her my login to prove that I've never done this and wouldn't. Immediately after offering my login, the problem quickly becomes more that I didn't take responsibility and that I need to suffer consequences for my actions. The reason for it going public quickly changes. I've taken responsibility the best I can. She's told me her problems with me a few times, and I've apologized as best I can. I'm not sure how I'm meant to take more responsibility. This whole thing was a really unfortunate learning experience, and all I can do is apologize and promise to be a better person in the future, which I fully intend to. I tried to be as reasonable as possible in this conversation between us, although I was very scared, and I did make a mistake by blaming it on my parents. I shouldn't have done that. I guess the thing I'm most confused about in this whole thing is why would she lie? Why would she say that she'd never been in a relationship before, never kissed before, intended to wait until 16, and twist the truth of what happened in person and make out like she never wanted to do anything and this wasn't a two-way thing, especially at the beginning. It paints a very black and white picture of me being the predator and her being the prey. It cuts out all nuance of me not knowing what I'm doing and being an idiot, which obviously doesn't excuse what I've said and how I've made her feel, but it's a very condemning picture that she's painted, and the things she said and the things that she's implied that I've done can very well follow me for life. I have no doubt that your pain is real and that you feel it, and I'm sorry for that. If there's anything I could do to make it up to you, I'm all ears, and my DMs are open. But not only does twisting the truth like this make a perception of me that will follow me for the rest of my life, along with some really cringy messages, but lying about things like this only makes it more difficult for other girls to come forward, I feel, and for them to be taken seriously, because people will figure, hey, if this girl lied and took things out of context, why wouldn't that girl? And it's important that victims of abuse and things like this are able to come forward. But saying things that just aren't true to paint a more black and white picture, I don't think that helps anybody here. So yeah, it's been a difficult couple of weeks, and I'm very lucky to have the friends and family that I do who are willing to hear me out and hear my side and were so supportive. I thank you guys. Otherwise I would have gone to a much darker place than I did. And yeah, I'm sorry for not responding to this sooner, but I thought I was going to have to answer for what I did, which is bad enough for an apology for sure. But the things I'm being accused of and the people I'm being likened to right now, it shocked me, and it took me a while to recover and come to terms with how people are seeing me right now. So it took me a while to compose myself, because I don't think anyone wants to see me crying in front of a camera. So yeah. I also asked that nobody go and attack Chey, regardless of what you think of this whole situation. I wouldn't put anyone through that, and she is someone to feel sorry for here, you know. I have no doubt that her pain is real, again, and maybe the things that she said she believes because she's thought back on the relationship and it's become a bigger and badder monster than it was. Maybe that's the case. I'm not sure, and I don't think it's worth attacking her over. I don't think she deserves that. So yeah, what's next? I'm going to be taking a much needed social media break, a hiatus, to get myself back in order. I'm seeing some counseling to help me with this whole situation and also make sure that I'm on the right track moving forward. And I hope that you guys will continue watching me into the future. At least some of you. I understand that people think what they think. I did do some bad things, and I understand if some of you are disappointed. I completely get that. But I do feel like I still have a lot to give in the YouTube scene and to the YouTube community, so I'm excited to get back to that after this break of I don't know how long, but I'll be back. Also, before I end the video, I find it ridiculous I have to address this, but I figure for the sake of being thorough, I might as well. So, in the replies to Chey's original tweet, there was a girl who I've been speaking to for a while. She was I used her pictures in my Tinder catfish video like a while back. Anyway, this girl said, This screenshot was from our DMs last summer. I'm the girl Veronica from his Tinder video, and he was talking about flying me up to Australia and also pulled a "you're ugly, so send me nudes to prove me wrong" thing. And she posts this screenshot where we're talking about me going to America, and she's saying it's like a free trial for her, which is me going to America, and we're talking about her coming to Australia. It's a mutual conversation where both of us are talking about going to each other's countries to visit each other. So I don't know, like, this is the least incriminating screenshot I've ever seen. And at the end of it, she says, maybe you should come down here though. So it's a very two-way conversation. Anyway, regarding the nudes thing, we'd been talking for a while. She sends me a nude. And she says something jokingly along the lines of, "Oh, I'm an angel," or something like that. I can't quite remember the wording, but I do have the screenshot. And I said something along the lines of, "Oh, I don't know, 4 out of 10. I might need more evidence of that." And she sent more, and as she sent more, the number went up. It was a very two-way, flirtatious, bantery conversation. And here are the screenshots. It's, I find it ridiculous that I have to address this. I find it ridiculous that she went and posted this and tried to make me and tried to dogpile on this. I don't know why she's done that. So yeah. Anyway, I hope this video has cleared up some of your confusion and some of the questions you had, and I'm sorry about this whole thing. Yeah. Thanks for watching.